Our own pets can shock us at times. This mom was worried when the cat scratched her child. She installed a camera and saw something terrifying. Kelly was horrified when she got her baby out of bed that morning. His little chest was full of scratch marks. The cat was sleeping on the windowsill, but she couldn't believe that the cat had scratched her baby this badly. She considered the cat her first baby and credited her for bringing their family together. But now something had gone terribly wrong. They had to figure out what happened. The cat came down to rub herself against her human mom's legs. It brought tears to Kelly's eyes. She didn't know how she would stand it if her cat Lucy was becoming a danger to her baby. But they couldn't ignore it completely. Brian, her husband, tried to comfort her. They would put up cameras in the room and figure out what was happening. They watched them closely the rest of the day. And strangely, nothing seemed weird. The baby gave her some of his food, and she licked his fingers and made him giggle. At nap time, the cat even slept next to the baby. If this was an angry creature, then she sure was hiding it well. But the next morning, the baby had even more scratches on his body. They watched the video and saw something terrifying. They couldn't believe their eyes. Kelly first laid her eyes on Lucy when she was a tiny kitten. Kelly had been visiting the animal shelter often, playing with the dogs and cats, defeating them, and taking the dogs for walks. She had been considering adopting or fostering a cat, but she hadn't chosen a cat to adopt yet. One day, as she was working with the dog, one of the shelter personnel called her to come and check something out. It was the smallest kitten she had ever seen. Kelly had found her on the side of the road. They watched for a few hours to check if the mom would come back, but she never did. When they couldn't wait anymore, they brought her to the shelter. The kitten was only a few hours old and she was adorable. They couldn't keep her at the shelter and all of their normal foster homes were full. She volunteered to take the kitten with her. She was willing to look after her. The baby would need round-the-clock care, and she would need to wake up every few hours to feed her. But since Kelly worked from home, she could do it. Since they knew her and she had already cleared all her home checks, the shelter allowed her to take the kitten with her right away. They were grateful someone could take the little beauty. And first, Kelly needed to take the tiny kitten, who she called Lucy, to the vet to be checked out. She was also going to need supplies and instructions on how to take care of her new baby. Her life had already changed that day, and it was going to change even more. She got to the vet and she found a man that she thought was almost as cute as the kitten she was holding. Brian was a young vet who gave some of his time to help the shelter and the animals that lived there. He was very happy to help the young woman and the kitten. He just hoped that the kitten wouldn't break Kelly's heart in the long run. A kitten that was abandoned by their mother could have some defect that they couldn't see yet. He tried to warn Kelly that something could still go wrong with Lucy, but she didn't want to hear it. She was determined to make sure that the kitten would survive. The next few weeks were rough. Kelly took Lucy with her everywhere she went. At home, the kitten was often found sleeping inside her jacket to keep warm. She was feeding her every few hours and they built a special bond. It was almost like having a newborn. But the next time they would meet was going to be a lot less than pleasant. Lucy had been eating solid foods for a week and running around like a happy kitten for a while. They really believed that they were out of the woods with the kitten. But then something changed completely. One night as they were watching television, Kelly noticed that Lucy wasn't entirely herself. She wasn't playing as much as she usually did that time of the night. She also didn't eat her dinner. It was a bit alarming, but she might have just played too hard all day. Then in the middle of the night she suddenly started having trouble breathing. She went to get some water and she was wobbly and couldn't walk right. By then Kelly realized that something was seriously wrong with her kitten. She was very worried and started considering phoning Brian at home. Brian came over smiling, but as soon as he saw the limp cat that she was holding, he sprang into action. They needed to help Lucy as quickly as possible. She wasn't getting enough oxygen. The first thing they had to do was get her an oxygen, and then try to figure out why the healthy cat suddenly got very sick. It took a bunch of tests, but then Brian had to give Kelly some terrible news. The cat had a heart defect. She was a very sick kitten, but that didn't mean that they were giving up on her. There was no way that Kelly could do that. They had to come up with a plan. Her heart defect wasn't major, but it was probably the reason that the mother cat had abandoned her in the first place. They had to fix the defect as soon as possible. The first step was surgery. It was scary since she was still so tiny. But without the operation, she would have no chance to get bigger. When Brian came walking out, his face was serious. She couldn't figure out if he had good news or bad. And then when he told her what happened, Kelly just broke down. The kitten had come through the operation with flying colors. She was going to be okay. They would watch her and put her on medication if needed, but together they would make sure that Lucy had a long life. She spent some time in the clinic, and for Brian, the best part of his day was when Kelly came to visit her kitten. They would later joke that she was so focused on her baby's well-being that she didn't even notice that Brian was trying to charm her too. But when she came to take Lucy home, he made his intentions clear. He asked her out on a date. She didn't want to leave the cat alone at home, so for their first date they had pizza and movies at home. And when Lucy got up against Brian and cuddled on him, he won serious points. It was the start of their whirlwind love story. Around a year later the two of them got married, and of course, Lucy was right there as a ring bearer. She even went with them on their honeymoon. This cat helped to bring their family together, and that made it even more scary when she seemed to turn on the baby. She had been great with him from even before he was born, and they fully believed that the two would have an instant bond, just like all three of them had. Even before Kelly knew she was pregnant, the cat started to act strangely. Lucy would climb on her and rub her head against her belly. She even slept with her head there, something she had never done before. None of her actions made any sense, until they found out that they were having a baby. The cat had been alerting them to the new life for weeks, but they hadn't noticed what she was saying. Her love of the baby Lucy continued right throughout the pregnancy, and as Kelly got closer, it was like the cat got even more protective and careful around her. The couple was overjoyed by this, especially since there were loads of people asking them if they were going to get rid of Lucy now that they had a human kid on the way. The answer was a resounding no. Many people warned them that the cat could get jealous or aggressive, but they didn't believe them. Besides, Brian cleaned all the litter boxes, so there was no danger to the baby or Kelly. People were being crazy. Or were they? Kelly went into labor a few weeks early, and they weren't entirely ready. But everything went well and both Mama and their new baby boy, Ryan, were doing fine. Their hospital stay was a few days longer than they thought it would be, and it was the longest that Lucy had ever been away from Kelly. They thought the cat was going to be all over her when she got back, but something completely different happened. They walked through the door and the cat came right up to her. But then he turned to the car seat with their little bundle inside. He started to rub against the car seat and put his head against the baby's head. It was the sweetest thing ever, and both Kelly and Brian had tears in their eyes. It seemed like everything was perfect, but life can be unpredictable. They were moving into a new house, and there was another change that poor Lucy had to deal with. She wasn't an only child anymore, and she was in a strange space. Not only that, but the cat's world was a whole lot noisier. Normally it would just be Kelly and Lucy hanging out all day, as Kelly worked from home. Like was at the vet clinic, and she could nap on her favorite person most of the day. But now there was a baby needing attention, family coming to visit, and a lot of noise that came with the baby and the family. Lucy had always been an outgoing cat, but she seemed a bit stressed out by all the movement and change. Who could blame her? Even Kelly and Brian were exhausted. Of course, it didn't help that their perfect baby boy came with one big issue: a bad case of colic. He was not sleeping for weeks. He would cry most of the night, and his parents would be up and trying to comfort him. It was hard. A few times when one of them would feel like they were close to their limit, Lucy would come and give them cuddles. It always helped, but another surprising thing happened. If the baby was sleeping and he was on the brink of waking up and crying, he would often calm down if Lucy got into his crib and put her head on his tummy. The cat helped him feel safe, but shockingly, this was also the first time that the cat showed any sort of aggression. She didn't like it if someone reached for the baby too quickly or bent down to pick him up. She hissed a few times when other people got too close. But she never hurt anyone, and Kelly and Brian were both convinced that she never could. Especially, not the baby that she loved so much. But they were exhausted from a lack of sleep and moving, and after several months they had reached the end of their rope. The baby was starting to sleep better, but they had so much time to make up for it. Felt like they would never feel better again. Then, their family gave them a big surprise. They had paid for a night nanny for a week. They could catch up on some sleep and know that there was someone there to check on Ryan the entire night. Then they didn't have to get up each time he moved. Ryan had slept in their room up to then, but the couple was willing to try anything to get some sleep. The nanny was also a nurse, and she came highly recommended. They met her in the day a few times, and she seemed to do well with Ryan. But what really set their minds at ease was the fact that Lucy liked her. Lucy didn't mind when she picked up the baby, and she was completely calm with the nurse around them. The first night she came, they were all a little nervous. Kelly and Brian went to sleep, and the nurse only called them when Ryan woke up for food. They had gotten more sleep than they had in months. It was glorious. Even Lucy came to sleep in their bed at some point. The poor cat was just as tired as her human parents. For the first time, they had the energy to explore their new neighborhood. Lucy didn't go out of the house except on a leash, and after all that rest, Kelly could take the cat and the baby for a walk. They lived close to a forest and the walk was beautiful. The next night the couple even decided to make the best of their help and go on their first date night after the baby. When they got home, the baby was fast asleep in his crib, the cat by his side. The nurse wasn't sure about that at first, but they assured her that it was fine. Then the couple went to bed, floating on a little bubble that would soon be popped. The next morning when Kelly went to pick up Ryan, she was horrified. The baby had scratches all over his tiny body. There were even a few in his face. How had he gotten them? Did Lucy scratch him? Was she jealous? Was all the change too much for her? Could it be that by going out the previous night they had stressed her out? They didn't know, and Kelly was very worried that she wouldn't like the answers. If Lucy had become a danger to their baby, what would they do? It would be like choosing between their two children. All day Kelly couldn't stop crying from fear and worry. My cat brought a camera to install in the baby's room so they would know what was going on soon. The entire day they watched all the interactions between the baby and the cat, but it was very weird. They couldn't see any tension there. The cat licked Ryan's fingers, making their baby giggle. He was just starting to eat solids, and he fed some of his treats to the cat. They even napped together like they always did. Nothing seemed to be wrong, but they had to admit that the cat was more jumpy than normal. She got a fright each time anything moved. They didn't know what to make of it. Until the next morning. The baby had woken up with even more scratch marks. Poor Kelly was worried sick because the cat had scratched her child. But when they looked at the camera, they saw something terrifying. After they went to bed, the night nurse came in to check on the baby. Lucy was sleeping by his feet, and she lifted her head when the nurse came in. But up to then, everything seemed fine. The room must have been hot because the nurse opened the top window. That was when something horrible happened. As soon as the window was open, Lucy was on high alert. Her body language changed at once. It was like she was waiting for something to happen. And it was about to. The nurse left the room soon after, and when it got quiet and dark, two glowing eyes appeared in the window. This was when Lucy reacted at once. She jumped on top of Ryan, scratching him in the process. Every time the animal moved, the cat moved to protect the baby, who remained blissfully unaware and asleep from all sides. She even scratched his face when jumping to protect him. The shadowy figure on the camera looked like a bat. That probably wouldn't have been a huge danger to the baby, but Lucy didn't know it, and she was clearly ready to give her life to protect the baby. They had never been that close to rural life, and she had never seen an animal like that. But she was ready to fight for her boy. They learned their lesson. They were right to trust the cat. She did love the baby as much as they thought. The bat soon flew out and left everyone uninjured. Soon after, they put screens on the window, and they made sure that their valiant warrior didn't have to protect the baby again. And she never scratched him like that again. What do you think about this story? Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.